Make a New Track is the new scenario that is going to come to Umamusume. It is going to release in about a month, and it is going to change. Well, it is going to be able. You're going to be able to create better parents compared to what you already have in Unity Cup, and so you're going to want to replace all of your parents with what you make in Make a New Track. And the reason for this is because in Make a New Track, you run more races due to the mechanics of it. And so you're going to have more skill points. A lot more race sparks are going to be proccing on your Umas, and you're going to have higher affinity bonus with your aces. The Scenario Spark gives stamina and guts, which is more valuable than the other Scenario Sparks given because it gives two stats that are both not really built towards on your deck, and you're not really wanting to train for them. And so it allows you to get more of the stat without needing to work for it and without needing to waste turns on it. Now, you may think that Unity Cup is special for having its Unity training mechanic, where you can get random skill hints just for training. But Mant has basically the same system, but just a little different, in which instead of training, it gives it from races. So it does have these random events that give different hints. Not many of them are really too important, but the main thing is the rivals mechanic, where on random turns on random races, you will have rivals that show up, and if you beat them, you are awarded random skill hints depending on the race distance and the style that your Uma ran in during the race. And this is basically exactly what Unity Cup does, except a little bit more targeted with the rivals mechanic because it's only the distance and your Uma's style. So you're able to get basically the skills that you want way more often. And so because of these benefits, there is not really much of a reason to be running parent runs on the Unity Cup if you don't already have a lineage started. It's not time efficient, and you will be making a good parent on Unity Cup, and then a month later, you're going to have to remake it anyway because your parent is not going to be as good. It is not going to have very good race affinity, probably. It is just not going to be as valuable as what you can make on Make a New Track. And so, to prepare for this, before Mant has released, you can choose to make a great grandparent who does not affect the race bonus, does not affect the affinity of your ace at all, does not affect the affinity, but it does affect the affinity and the sparks on your parent and your grandparent. And so the idea is to run a lot of good G1 races to get a lot of skill points and a lot of race sparks, and to take good general skills that are good for any distance and any style, and then have those skills proc on your grandparent and your parent so that then you can buy them on these Umas, and then they can spark, and then they can proc it in inspiration on your ace. So that even if you use an Uma like El Condor Pasa on an ace that has bad compatibility with El Condor Pasa, it won't matter because her affinity does not affect the ace here because of its distance in the relationship. And the reason why I'm choosing El Condor Pasa is because she has dirt aptitude, she has long aptitude, she has mile aptitude, and medium aptitude, which means that she can run a lot of G1 races. And it doesn't have to be El Condor Pasa. It's just it's just a Uma that everyone has, but generally you want to be taking Umas with dirt aptitude. And like for example, Ogre Cap is another really good option. Um, Agnes Digital might be all right. But yeah, like dirt aptitude is a pretty important part so that you are able to get a lot of G1 races done. It is recommended that on this run, you take Ignited Power because it is an exclusive skill only found on Unity Cup. So if you have this in your pool for hints, and then you are running parents in Make New Track, those parents will not be able to obtain this skill, but they may be able to spark it from your parent, from your great grandparent. So then they can still obtain it, and then the ace can still get this skill, which is a pretty decent Excel skill. It is recommended to make 2 of these great grandparents because you want to be able to not need to borrow other Umas when making your grandparent run. Because thing is that you have a second great grandparent here, and it's either it's your own or it's a borrow. Now it could be a borrow that is specific to your distance or your style, so that then it's easier for you to get those skills on your grandparent. Or it can be your second one, which has better affinity and has these general skills. And then you can just get the specific skills based on card hints or other means. Personally, I think it's more efficient for you to just make 2 great grandparents because it'll have better affinity compared to the borrowing one. Because honestly, borrowing a lot of the time just sucks and their affinity isn't very high. So I'd personally recommend just making 2. So you basically just don't want to be borrowing because it allows you to just have more freedom when parent farming. But it's really up to you making 2 of these. I mean, it's very possible. I mean, for me, for my example, I don't really have a good Uma that I could make. That I could use to get all these G1 races. So for me, I may possibly just do a borrow and then have this being used as my other great grandparent. But it's really up to you. Once you have this made, you can make your grandparent, you can make your parent. And for these, you're going to be running this and making a track. So they'll have the skill points, they'll have the higher affinity bonus. You will want to target skills and races that apply to your actual ace that you're going to end up using. You want to keep the important skills, these general skills. The also the for the case of the grandparent, you want to be keeping the long and end skills. For example, if you're doing a long CM on end, you want to be keeping your style and distance specific skills on your grandparent so that it can be applied to your parent, and then that parent can get those sparks and then they can be applied to your ace. For your pink sparks on these parents, you're going to want the distance that is the correct distance for the champion's beating that you're running for your ace. And for blues, you either want to have power or stamina, either 2 or 3 star. I would recommend having some of them, at least for your grandparent, be 3 star, because you do not want to have a full lineage where both your grandparents and your parent have a total of 6 stars for your blue, and then you run your ace run and you're getting really low values on how much stats you're gaining, and it ends up becoming very difficult to make a good ace run that actually reaches the stat line, even with good affinity. So you're going to be running, want to be running enough, like you want to be hitting 3-star blues so that even if it means running more parent runs, in the end, you will end up running less ace runs because you'll be hitting your stat line faster than if you rushed through your parents and only took 2-star blue. Also, yeah, I forgot to mention, but for your great grandparent, honestly, you don't really need to care about the blues and the pinks. You can really just care about the whites. That's really the main thing that matters. The races and the white sparks are really what matters here. And the thing is that with your ace, is that I've run into this problem where I have to use these Umas to get excels and uniques for the certain track. But the problem with that is that their affinities with Taishin, for example, are really, really bad. So I have to use Dober, I have to use Ryan, but their affinity with Taishin is bad. And so if I did this, I wouldn't need to deal with this issue because my race affinity would be high enough that their bad compatibility with Taishin wouldn't actually even matter in the first place. Because I could simply have the race affinity to counteract the bad compatibility here, and then I could still be hitting double circle affinity even with using these Umas. But if you rush through your parents and your race affinity is low and you're still hitting single circle even after doing all of this, you have the choice of running. Well, actually, I guess you couldn't really do this, could you? You'd have to plan it. But yeah, you could have these ones as the grandparent, and then they will only have a chance of proccing the unique instead of being guaranteed, but your affinity will be better in the end. It will take a bit less of a hit because the difference in affinity is just a bit smaller when it's the grandparent compared to the normal parent. But generally, you just want to keep them as your parent and then have enough race affinity bonus to counteract the lack of compatibility. Yeah, it seems about it. I don't know. But yeah, like your full thing, your full like for example, if I were to do a Taishin lineage, I would be wanting to take Pasa here with good general skills. I'd want to take Gold Ship as my grandparent because she has the best. Actually, that's a lie. It depends on the parent you take. I think it's still Gold Ship is still good for a grandparent, but actually no. Okay, how about this? I'm taking Taishin. So this is Taishin. My first parent, I'm gonna want Major Dober. Then my second parent, I'm gonna want Gold Ship. And then based on these two, I'm gonna want to be taking the best affinity grandparents, depending because it is different. Your ace and your parents decide the affinity, the compatibility of these other two Umas, all the grandparents. So a lot of it is really just dependent on, except for the uniques. A lot of it, the Umas that you choose, is really dependent on the compatibility and also possibly the aptitudes. Because, for example, if I'm doing a long CM, I'm going to want these parents here to have long affinity so that they're able to actually spark the pink that I'm trying to look for. One question is, what kind of deck should you be using for these runs? Because, I mean, for example, the great grandparent, you're not really caring about the sparks, so a lot of it is dependent on the deck you use, and it's also dependent on the deck you use for the parents. So, in Mant, you're basically going to want to be using similar deck to what you would be using in Unity Cup. But there's one thing to keep in mind is that you want to be sure that your deck is not relying on random skill hints that come from training. Because in Unity Cup, you are allowed to train a bit, and you will hit some of these random hints. But in Make a New Track, it's different because you're doing a lot of races now. You're not going to have the chance to be hitting these random hints. So cards that rely on that are not going to be as valuable anymore, and cards that rely on chain events are going to be keep their value, because it doesn't matter what you train or what you do during your turn, you are still going to be hitting your chain event. So cards like, for example, Yainu Miteki are still going to be good on Mant because their hints, their playtime's over, for example, comes from a chain event. So in Mant, you're going to be wanting to use decks where the hints that you're looking for come from chain events, or you can really just try your luck in the random skills in which you could just really be using like a normal ace deck, honestly, that has high race bonus. And you could be just trying to find the hints that you're looking for through rival mechanic. But it's really, I mean, I'm not really too sure yet. I mean, I didn't play through Mant myself, but it shouldn't be that much different from what you already do for Unity Cup. So for the deck that I would use for this Alcondor Pasa, the great grandparent, I would use a deck like this. So I'm structuring this deck in a way where a lot of my skills that I want are coming from chain events, right? So, for example, I have these skills that I want, right? These general skills that I want here. Now let's see how many of them are covered here, right? So I have Kita-san Black, who gives Professor of Curvature, and she gives Straightaway Adept, right? She gets this from the second. She gets this from the third. Anyway, Kita-san Black gets these two skills from her chain event, Straightaway Adept and Professor Curvature. Professor Curvature is just the gold version of Corner Adept, and she also has a random hint where she can get Corner Adept as well. So these two skills are good to get. King Halo gets Umastan off of her first event. So that means that Umastan is done. I am taking Rico for the stamina gain that she has. The reason why I want stamina is because it allows me to run long races, which is actually one of the career goals for Condor Pasa at the very end. She has to run Aramakinan. So this allows me to still pass her career goal and also allows me to run long races for the scheduled races that I take, the G1s. You could take a stamina card here. It's really your choice. But and also if you run an Uma that doesn't need stamina, that's also perfectly fine. But if they need stamina, then it's probably best to just run Rico. It also gives me energy. It's just a very good all-round card for Unity Cup, so I would just rather take it. Matakane gives right-handed, which is another skill that I need from our chain event. Yeah, I know Miteki gets playtime's over from her chain event. And alongside Marvelous Sunday is all from random hints, and Yainu Miteki also gets random hints. Let's see, they get pretty similar ones. Yainu Miteki gets Ramp Up and Tail Held High, and Marvelous Sunday gets Ramp Up, Tail Held High, and Straightaway Adept. So Straightaway Adept is even more done. Tail Held High can be from the random hint, and ramp up is also from random hints. Ramp up is also found in Unicup itself, as well as Nimble Navigator. So with this deck, in the end, I am only missing one skill, really, that is unable to be obtained, and that is Slipstream. And honestly, that's fine, because in the end, you really are only trying to get half of this skill pool in general. You only really want to spark half of these. It isn't realistic to expect to obtain all of these skills and have them all on the great grandparent. You want to take about half of them. So for example, I mean, like, I could be missing these skills. I could be missing obviously Slipstream. Like, I could just have 4 of these skills sparked, and that would be fine. That would be fine, because I mean, it's obviously not ideal, but these are still going to get passed on to your great grandparent, to your parent, and passed down to your ace. Because I mean, look at these cards. Like, these could be cards. Some of these cards are cards that you use on your ace anyway. I mean, you're going to be using Kita probably. Actually, for your ace on Mant, I can't really be sure, but I'm just saying, like, these are cards that you could still find in an ace, right? So, and also for your other parents too. So you're going to be obtaining these skills anyway. It's not really too big of a deal if you miss some of them on your great grandparent. But the point is to make it easier to make your grandparent and your parent. And that is really the reason why you're doing this prep in the first place. It's not really to directly affect your ace, but really just to make Mant a little bit easier for you when you try to make parent runs in the future. And I think that's about it. Something like that. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just for parents, you really just want to be preparing for the next CMs that you're going to have in the future. I mean, it's going to be best to have this grandparent, great grandparent, be usable for when you make Mant parents. Even later on, like, I don't know how Grand Live is going to be, but it's best to have uh, something in place so that when you do this, because it's actually going to be optimal because of this stuff, you'll have this great grandparent that you can use to make these other parents. So, yeah.